your financial statements feed into this plan, and particularly those of you that are getting started and as you begin to develop a relationship with a lender, they're going to expect some form of a plan from you that incorporates these statements into it in order to secure any financing from them. So it is important. It's one of the uses of your financial statements. There are two types of business plans, I would say. You have your management type business plan that's very detailed, which is what they're covering all day today in the other session, that has lots of detail as to how you're going to operate your business from soup to nuts. Your lenders, well, first thing is your credit representative, your loan officer that you're working with, whether it's with Farm Credit or any other bank, has a lot of people they're working with. So when you're going in to talk to them, you need to have a very clear and succinct description of what you need and what you need to do. A 30-page document is not going to get read. I mean, it's just the long and the short of it. So you need to take that 30-page document that you have for your own management and pull the pieces out here that we'll share with you, and have, I didn't mention it in the other one, I should have, but you know, have you ever heard of the 3-floor speech? The speech that you can give to describe your idea within the time it takes you to go 3 floors in an elevator, the elevator speech. So yeah, you need to have that quick elevator speech in your mind. With your lender, it's going to be a little bit longer than the 3-floor rule, but that's just getting the idea. You need to be clear, succinct, and very focused on the financials. So your typical business plan will have your mission, values, and goals. That's important to share with your lender so that they understand why you're doing what you're doing. But again, this can be one of those areas, if you can sum that up in just a few key statements that you can tell them very quickly, that's where you need to be. Goals are very important. You need to have these translated both from a practical standpoint, from a personal standpoint, but financial goals are really what your lender is going to be looking for. Differentiation, what makes your business different than the other 30 people that walked in that week. You know, these are some examples of how you might differentiate yourself from another business. Now, if you find that you're status quo in a particular area, that's fine, but emphasize the unique skills and the unique attributes that you bring into it. You know, raised on a family operation, or I have, you know, this experience from another profession that really does it, and you know, this passion. You know, Tim brought up in the last session, this is extremely important. You know, we can tell pretty quick whether or not I can usually tell pretty quick whether someone's going to make a go of something or not, just by the passion in their voice. If someone is fairly monotone in describing it, or has already been kind of given up on the business idea, they're going to have a tough time going at it, because particularly in agriculture, you know, I think we have sometimes a rose-filled glasses view of agriculture from the outside world, but when we get down into the dirt and into the weeds, it can be a tough business. Business plans, you know, structure your company. You know, think of, you know, what type of entity are you going to be, and what type of entity are you? That's very important when you're talking to a lender, or just couching how your financial statements are going to be organized and how your financial plans are going to be organized. If it's a sole proprietorship, it's me, myself, and I that I report to, that's one thing. If we're some sort of a partnership or LLC or corporate structure where we have other people involved, that's where we've got to get very detailed in our financial plans to make sure that we're taking care of not just our living expenses, but multiple family living expenses. You know, we can tell you some real interesting stories with some of these family businesses where, you know, multiple people had access to the checkbook and were paying family expenses out of it, and communication wasn't there, and suddenly at the end of the year when we divided it up, suddenly dad, that, you know, it's a father and son type operation, suddenly dad's not the majority shareholder anymore because paid for a trip to Florida, paid for this, that, and the other, and the farm had a bad year. Suddenly son is a majority owner just because they didn't have a good plan in place as far as limits and whatnot. Financial analysis, this is where you need to spend a lot of time. What's it going to cost you to get going? I would encourage you to look at least 3 years into the future and in the past. If you've been operating for a number of years and you have some past data to go on, that's good. If you're just getting started, you know, having some of your personal financial information to go at least 3 years back to draw on to show that you've had somewhat of a stable personal financial history as well. But looking ahead for these startup costs, let's not just think of what we're going to need in year one, but let's look at what additional cash infusion we may need in the next few years. Statistics across the country will tell us that most new businesses in the United States, including agriculture, fail within the first 3 years of operation. And quite often, at least the ones that I work with in agriculture, the ones that struggle are the ones who did not clearly anticipate the amount of startup costs that they really have and didn't account for we might not make money that first year. Or it might take us 3 or 4 years to truly be profitable. Where's our money coming from? This is where that cash flow plan comes up. What's our required repayment? Are we doing an interest-only deal for a year or two, or are we going to be having to pay the whole loan back in 1 year? The devil's in the details, as they say. And where can you get out if we have a situation where we haven't had a success as we had anticipated? What other options do we have? Some examples that we have here. If we own land, can we sell off a building lot, sell development rights, something like that? Are there other family members that are willing to infuse some cash into the business? Liquidation of assets. This is last on the list for a reason. That's not the option we want to start with, because obviously if they're necessary assets for the business, we need to hold on to them because that can affect future cash flow. Pro forma financial statements. You hear this word pro forma. Financial statements, your balance sheet, your income statement, your cash flow statement. In normal operation, that reflects what happened actual with your business in the past and your cash flow budget as far as your plan going forward. Your pro forma is a projection, your projected income statement. This is what we're saying is going to happen in the coming year. Income expense, the income statement includes your depreciation. Depreciation is a real deal. I mean, it's something farms over time can show a cash checkbook profit. They have extra cash at the end of the year every year. But if that cash is not exceeding that depreciation, that rust factor, that I bought a tractor for $50,000 and it's losing $5,000 at least every year in value. If I'm not getting that much in additional and setting aside to replace that tractor someday, when that thing blows up, I'm in a pickle. So that's where depreciation comes in. Your projected cash flow, I equate this to a budget. You should have a personal household budget to plan. When that property tax bill comes due, you want to have enough money in savings to account for that. Same thing with your projection cash flow statement. Looking at where the income's coming in, where it's going out. And then your pro forma balance sheet. This is where you're saying at the end of the year, after we've done a year's worth of business, where are we going to be financially? What are our assets going to be? What's our cash going to be? What's our loan balances going to be? So this is what your sensitivity analysis do. How much of a decrease in income can you handle without a major issue? And do you have enough cushion left in your asset value in that collateral? Do you have enough collateral left to be able to take on new lending, new debt if you needed to? Yeah, increase in variable rate. That's a big one to be thinking about today. We've been at low interest rates for a significant amount of time, record low interest rates for amount of time. There's only one direction our interest rates can go. I'm not a predictor. I'm not predicting that they will be going up, but there's only really one way they can go. So we need to take that into account when we're doing that. So how does this loan fit into my big picture, my capital planning? This is where you're going to sit down and take some time. We talked about depreciation. We have a certain number of, we have facilities, buildings, equipment that we need for our operation. So we have stuff that we already own that we're going to have to replace someday. So we need to make a list of everything we own currently, what needs to be replaced and when is it likely to be replaced. And we don't necessarily just use, for sake of argument, let's say tractors on average maybe last 10 years. We don't necessarily use 10 years for all of them, because we might have one tractor that is used every single day on the farm is more likely to wear out more quickly, whereas we have one that's used for a very specialty purpose within our operation, or a piece of implement or something that's used rarely. That thing might last 20 years. So sort of think through, put your best guess into how long that's going to last. If you're in livestock, your fencing, your barns, all your feeding facilities and equipment, that's all needs to be part of that. What items are you going to need someday to grow? If we're just starting a business, we're looking to grow in some stages. You know, if we're in a vegetable business, and we're doing some wholesaling where we're packing, we have a certain packing line today. Well, maybe to grow, we want to have a bigger capacity packing line in the future. What are those? Or maybe we need a bigger tractor, a bigger piece of equipment. Make your wish list and have fun with that. You know, sit down and do some dreaming. If we had a really profitable year, what are some things that we could have here to make our life a lot easier, or really give us some enjoyment for this operation? You know, my dad bought a nice new pickup truck this year. That's been on his wish list for a number of years. So he's happy with that. Priority, and then you need to put priority on all these based on your return to the business, not based on, you know, the nice new pickup truck. That's been on the wish list for a number of years because it doesn't return a darn thing to the business. You know, it's been on the wish list for a number of years, but its priority, you know, was fairly low based on the fact that, you know, the old beat up truck still gets you from point A to point B. Have some fun with it. Have your reinvestment plan. You know, look at least 5 years into the future and make a list. And that's, you know, think in your mind, okay, we borrowed this money. That's going to be a loan. At some point in the future, we may need to borrow some more money, or we need to reserve some of our cash to be able to replace these things. Having a list really helps. Cash flow budget, why is it necessary? The timing of when your money's coming in and when it's going out is critical in agriculture. Any sort of crop enterprise, you're looking at a negative cash flow the first 5 to 6 months of the year, usually from year to year. Livestock business, it depends on the specific business you're in. If you're in like beef cattle, you know, you're probably either selling calves in spring or in fall, or they're coming off pasture in spring or fall or whatever. So you're going to have seasonal cash flow there. You know, you need to know that timing and how much money you're going to need to bring in, whether you're borrowing some operating money or you're pulling money out of a savings account or out of a CD or something like that you have on the side. You need to know when that's coming in and plan for it. Gives you a great opportunity to prioritize those capital purchases. Plus, the bankers love them. You know, you can really impress that lender that when you walk in the door and say, this is to the penny what I'm going to need this year in operating money, or this is, you know, and this is how I'm going to pay you back on this other loan that I already have with you. It's really, they love them because they know that that's a sign that you're managing your business really well. So how do we put this budget together? You know, your top step one is to put that income statement together, your gross sales, all your income sources from the operation of your business, minus those variable expenses, the cost of goods sold, you know, your seed, your feed, your fertilizer, your yeah, those are the good ones there. Your labor, that's strictly related to production, so harvest labor, if you're in a produce type operation. That's your gross margin, the bottom line there. That's what you have available to pay these overhead costs, which are like your owner labor, or management labor, your fuel, your taxes, depreciation isn't paid in cash, but it's there. And then there's your net margin. And then there's some definitions there. Dirty 5, depreciation, interest, repairs, taxes, and insurance. That's, you know, bankers love to talk about that. Those are things that come out of your overhead. And then add a net non-farm income after tax. Take out your family living expenses. Most people are farming not just for pleasure, they're farming because they'd like to have that as an income source, as a business. So you need to budget, that's where your household budget comes into play. How much does it cost us to live? If you were one of the Amish customers that I used to have when I worked in Pennsylvania, you lived on about $16,000 to $18,000 a year. If you're a typical household in the U.S., your household living expenses are roughly $47,000 to $48,000 a year per household. That's like median household living expense, and that varies quite a bit. So, how much are you going to need? And when are you going to need that expense? if you're paying school tuition, you're going to have big bumps at certain times of the year. Your personal property taxes come out at certain times of the year. Then you have your just monthly bills that happen every month. What's your monthly debt payments? Your operating notes typically are just interest only, and then pay back all the principal at the end of the year. But then you don't want to forget about your suppliers. It's not just your big operating note that you maybe work with something like Farm Credit on, but all of your chemical dealers, all of your fertilizer dealers, all of your seed dealers have credit, some sort of credit system that they can offer. Even your local feed stores, you can buy stuff on credit. Make sure you put that in there as well, as far as how you're going to pay them back and what timing you have there. Your debt payments, when are they due? Is it a monthly or quarterly payment? And then your mortgage payments, how much are they and when are they due? What do you need every month to pay those expenses? Is it positive or negative? If it's negative, how are you going to fund that? Are you pulling money out of savings? Are you drawing on an operating loan? I wouldn't recommend this, but some folks will just put it on a credit card. That's option of last resort in my book. And then determine any other capital needs. How are they funded in? So, when are we going to need these purchases, and how are we going to make them? Be realistic. You can have a loss in the first year, and a lender is not necessarily going to turn their back on you if they see it's building you towards future profits. Know what's realistic for your industry. Look at some benchmarks. Have others look at your plan.